Hello and welcome to the Terrace Podcast, a very dry Terrace Podcast where Hearts came to 3 down against Motherwell. Rangers continued their unbeaten start to the season. Dundee earned another point on the road and Celtic were the only winners of the weekend. To discuss all that and more, I'm joined by Euan Taylor. How you doing, Euan? I've had a shocking intro there.
Hi, Craig. I'm well. I'm well personally, professionally, but not so much in football, despite the Rangers' invincible season continuing. Yeah. I believe I've not actually checked this, but I saw someone say that only 4 teams in the league have actually won a game yet, and that remains the case after this weekend.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's two games didn't happen because of the European thing, but yeah,
yes, exactly.
It's very very dry so far. And yeah, I suppose we'll come on to speak obviously about Motherwell, but I can't imagine like 2 fan bases having more of a different view of their own seasons than Rangers and Motherwell fans so far, despite probably trying to play quite a similar way, and yeah, they've had exactly the same results. But I suppose the expectations are justifiably higher amongst one fan base than the other.
I suppose the approach that the opposition takes may be different, with the exception of Rangers. The I don't know. Yeah, but we'll come on and talk about that.
We could use that as an excuse if we must. There's the millions of pounds on the other side of the scales. But anyway, yes.
I mean, I was going to apologise in advance for my performance, but I don't think I have to now. After that start, I decided to have. I was so knackered last night, and I decided to have an early night. So I went to my bed about 9:30, and then I woke. I thought to myself, well, sometimes when I do that, I wake up at a stupid time, and I thought, well, at least I can make a head start. Woke up at 8. We're recording at 10 now, and I still have a day of work to do. So I've been scrambling about a bit this morning. Still got my coffee. Still waking up a wee bit.
Exactly.
Despite
we've
that,
got two of the more professional members of the podcast. I can't imagine recording a podcast with Craig Fowler at 10 o'clock in the morning. Just wouldn't happen. Craig Fowler's not seen 10 o'clock in the morning for about 5 years at this point, I would say.
We will start with Hearts 3, Motherwell 3. As we mentioned, Motherwell have made a really eye-catching start to the season, and they made a really eye-catching start to this match. Derek McInnes admitted after the game they got his team selection wrong, and going by his comments, he knows it's not the first time having to make substitutions at half-time for the 3rd game in a row. But Motherwell, I was impressed with what I'd seen of Motherwell up until this match, going into this match, I should say. Not that they disappointed me in this game. I thought that they had kept the ball really well, and then had been a mixture of poor execution and poor decision making in the final third, especially against Rangers, were the reasons why they hadn't won a game yet. And I was kind of expecting more of the same. The personnel was the same. They'd brought in Callum Hendry, but he started on the bench. They'd brought in Regan Charles-Cook, but it's too early for him to make the matchday squad. But they were clinical. They had 3 shots on target and they scored all 3 of them. The first one they got a bit of luck with. They didn't really create much in the first half. The possession didn't so much dominate the game in the first half as Motherwell. They sort of had a lot of the ball in their own half. Hearts did sort of manage to stop them from getting out a few times. There was a couple of warning signs of them breaking the press with 2 passes, but it was after half time. It was that little spell after half time when Hearts changed their shape, put an extra man in the middle, didn't matter, and they were still adjusting to their shape, and Motherwell went 3-0 up. And I don't know, you saw them a couple of weeks ago. Were you impressed with Motherwell in this game?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to be. I mean, they aren't, the fact that they aren't winning games yet, as we touched on, I mean, there are reasons for that. I think, in some of the games that's been because, as you say, they probably, and you can argue that they're possibly addressing this in terms of the signings. They probably just lack a wee bit of quality in the forward areas of the pitch in particular. And the reason they probably didn't win the game the weekend, it was probably lack a wee bit of quality at the back as well. So they're not. I'm really, really impressed with the midfield, and I think that may actually be one of the best midfields in the league, even just on player quality. But I don't think you could say that about the defence. Possibly the goalkeeper now. I think we would come under question as well, and the forwards. But it's within what they are doing is they're doing what they are told and what they should be doing. So tactically, I think it's working almost incredibly well. And then, but obviously, the manager can't, he can't save a shot that's straight at a goalkeeper. He can't, make the right decision for players in the box, and he can't put chances away. But the tactical structure is hugely impressive. I don't think there's any other way to say it. And Motherwell, Motherwell and player quality, they're a bottom half team ultimately, and maybe they'll finish there. Who knows? But they're certainly going to be fun to watch, and you have to say that they look like more than the sum of their parts. And if they can find a wee, I don't know how much of the sort of Miller money they're wanting to spend. They've already, I imagine guys like Callum Hendry and Regan Charles-Cook probably would have been a wee bit out with their price range without that Miller money. I don't know if they've got any scope to do a couple more signings. I think they could probably do with a centre half. I would suggest, albeit Stephen O'Donnell. We'll come on to for that. I think that was from right back. But
he's playing right back. It was the last 2 weeks he had played centre half.
Yeah, but what a pass for the third goal. But second
goal as well. Incredible. He plays a key pass in the second goal as well.
Yeah. But yeah, they probably just need a wee bit more quality if they're going to be the sort of surprise package that finishes in the European spot, say, which I don't think is beyond them. I have to say, but yeah, they're usually impressive how quickly it's bedded in. I think probably they're an example of how beneficial the League Cup group stage can be for teams, because he was under pressure pretty much from the first couple of games in that League Cup group stage. Motherwell fans did not seem that they were really sort of buying into it, and they were conceding some daft goals, but you could see that on the kind of those games, they're competitive, but they're not quite the same pressure as the league games, and they've definitely benefited from that. And probably in terms of pure performance, they've probably been the most impressive team in the league, despite having not won a game. And yeah, we'll come on to what happened within the game and why it didn't quite go over the line. But yeah, and I thought, you obviously had your thoughts on Hearts setup, but we were talking about it in the group chat before the game, and it did seem odd to play. And this is actually, I wonder if teams will start to now treat Motherwell with a bit more respect than just thinking, well, it's Motherwell, because that McInnes lineup felt like, well, it's Motherwell, so this is a game where we should be looking to dominate at home and kind of playing a sort of 4-2-4 almost formation seemed to be the plan.
I think he obviously wanted to dominate the ball, but I think he spoke about it afterwards. He did have that shape was with what Motherwell do in mind. He wanted to disrupt the 2-6s. It didn't work. He admitted it didn't work, but he went man for man. And I don't think it was really anything to do with the shape.
Stop doing that, Derek. Derek, you've done that. You've gone man for man against teams that play 4-3-3 and want to dominate the ball for your whole time in Scotland. And it worked like twice in about 100 attempts. Stop doing it.
And I don't think it was to do with the shape, because he changed to a 3-man midfield after the break, and Hearts were worse after that. It wasn't until Motherwell went 3-0 up that Hearts got better. So it wasn't the shape. It was people not knowing where to be, because Motherwell are really good at passing the ball about their defence and always having somebody free. There's always somebody free. The keeper's getting involved as well, and he's not too bad at clipping out to... That's why O'Donnell was so influential, and Longello, because they're really good at sneaking forward And then guys like, you could see McInnes telling Kabore to make sure he was on him. And for the... No, it's not the first goal. So basically in the first half, there's twice where Motherwell beat the Hearts press. Like I said, they didn't create much at all. They score a deflected goal. It was very similar to what they had done in the first two matches where they had a lot of the ball. And even then, I think it was like 55% or something. It wasn't like completely dominant possession wise. And I know that's like a sort of one statistic you can kind of do what you want with. But they were 1-0 up through creating very little. But there was two warning signs of when they broke the press with just two passes, and they were at Hearts and they were attacking Hearts. And the first one was when Devlin wasn't on the man he should have been, and the second one, I think it was Forrest. And then in the second half, that's what happens for the second and third goals. Hearts, and I don't know whether it's the second one's like 2 minutes after the restart. So I don't know how much of it is Hearts settling into their new shape and not knowing where to be, or how much of it's just a continuation of the warning signs that were there in the first half. But I don't know if it was so much. I think it was maybe more personnel than the shape. I think you saw the difference in the second half eventually with Beningame. Beningame, when he gets on the ball compared to Devlin, his first instinct is how he can do something positive with possession, whereas Devlin was getting booed in the first half for passing back to the keeper from the halfway line. You know what I mean? So it's like, it was one of those kind of days for Hearts. And then the big argument is obviously why Braga doesn't start, and McInnes explained afterwards. I mean, it doesn't justify why he doesn't start, and I think it means that Braga probably does start the next game regardless. And then maybe there's a conversation about Shankland, but he spoke about how both Shankland and Braga want to come to the ball, and he's trying to coach Braga a bit more to be the guy to
run
like he did for the second goal, run in, make the runs in behind and things like that.
Yeah, you can see that. I mean, that obviously jumped out to me as one of Lawrence Shankland's foremost haters, is that the McInnes mentioned Tim in the post match, and they all basically like, well, him and Braga want to do the same thing, and then made me think, well, is Braga maybe better at it? And that's I don't know that Braga is quick enough to be Shankland's legs in that sort of way that he's had previously, where he's had guys that are willing to run in behind, and then Shankland drops deep. I mean, I think the Shankland dropping deep thing, I'm not really convinced that that's all that good. It's always felt to me a wee bit like that's born from necessity, because he wants to get on the ball and he can't get on the ball any other way. So he wants to drop deep. But I'm not sure that he actually is a great decision maker in the final third. I mean, you obviously watch him a lot more than I do, but that it's always felt to me like he's done that as a way of generating shots for himself, as opposed to actually making like brilliant decisions. Now, he's not a terrible footballer. I'm not going to say he isn't, but I just don't know if you say where what Braga managed to do actually for the first goal, and sort of he got that ball, it was sort of, I think it bounced back to him, and then he like dribbled past a couple of players and got a shot away, which then bounced out to Milne, who finished it brilliantly. I don't know if Shankland has that kind of sort of magic about him, but Shankland, I mean, will still try to get a shot away in that scenario, but I'm just I don't think Shankland's a natural number 10. I think that more than, well, that was one of the major reasons why last season for Hearts didn't work, because Shankland was playing as a 10. So
he doesn't want McInnes doesn't want Shankland as a 10.
Yeah,
I mean, he wants I think the idea is for him to be in some of those areas to link the play, and then Braga said after the game that his first goal, Hearts' second goal, that's what McInnes wants from his strikers. He wants the ball, when the ball goes over the top like that, he wants one running behind and he wants another one in the box, basically. So he wants Shankland finishing the moves.
Yeah.
But that's not clicked yet. That's not happened yet for Hearts. There's still lots of issues for Hearts. There's lots of positives. There's lots of issues. We could continue to talk about both them and Motherwell, but we should probably move on. I did suggest starting with another game, but I was vetoed by a non-Heart supporter before everybody gets on our backs. We will move to Sunday's game, and that was St Mirren 1, Rangers 1. Kind of same old story for Rangers here. We'll start with St Mirren, and that's 2 weeks in a row that the opposition, pretty decent opposition, if I do say so myself, has had to make substitutions. It's been nullified completely in the first half, has had to make drastic changes at half-time and go after the game. And it seems that Robinson got his tactics spot on once again from the start of this. They were a bit unlucky not to win the game. Probably could have done a bit more in the second half. But it's stacking up for looking like another strong season for St Mirren.
Yeah, St Mirren just have you try to find different ways to say, you know what to expect from St Mirren, because that's what everyone sort of says about them. But it's true, they have a sort of floor to them, to their performance, which they struggle to go below. I mean, actually, the only game I would say they've really struggled in this season was again against Motherwell, because they didn't quite know how to. But I mean, who knows how to deal with Motherwell? No one does. So that was the only game where they've sort of you've looked and golfed. That really wasn't, they struggled there, and they still managed to get themselves back into that. So they just have a way of playing which is horrible to play against. They're really, really physical. They're quick. They're kind of. I mean, that was the concerning thing, obviously, from a Rangers standpoint yesterday. Is that just St Mirren just looked so much better athletically than Rangers, so that was a big concern. But is one of the reasons why St Mirren just have that level of performance that you're going to really struggle to have an easy time of it against St Mirren, because they've got ways that can hurt you. They're obviously very adept at set pieces. They've got that they do play with or like to play with the two strikers, and both of them. I mean, that's probably best I've seen a Junga play for a while. But Mandron, is probably a bit more consistent, and he did really well for the to set up the goals as well as the Junga's finish. So yeah, they just have that. I suppose that floor in their sort of performance level, which means that if they play well, then they can they can batter teams. Like I suppose the game against Kilmarnock, say towards the end of last season when they absolutely battered Kilmarnock. They have that in them sometimes, but it's more the level of just like every game is going to be a battle. And it doesn't really matter. They're kind of unlucky in the opening weekend that they didn't get something from Celtic Park. It was only a deflected effort that they got them there. I mean, the one thing, there was sort of a narrative after the game, and I'd actually, I thought all of the Rangers personnel sort of said this was, we're a lot better in the second half. I don't know that was actually so in chance creation. I mean, there was an element of Rangers probably, or St Mirren probably created less in the second half, but actually, the Rangers had better chances in the first half. Cameron and Asgard had really good chances in the first half, which one of which was a sort of quite a weird backwards save that Jamal George pulled off, but that those were better chances than Rangers really made in the second half, to be honest. So, and I think a lot of it was just sort of game state that came into it, and St Mirren. I actually wonder if Rangers had scored earlier, I am not sure that would have been that good for Rangers, because I think if St Mirren might have then gone again, you could start to see that a wee bit, like St Mirren started to have a bit more going forward again after it went to 1-0. So I think if Rangers maybe scored in sort of 60 minutes, I'm not convinced actually that St Mirren wouldn't have scored again. So yeah, I thought that was just it's obviously a natural thing that you start to defend a bit deeper and try to hold on to what you've got, and that's why eventually Rangers managed to obviously to get a goal. But St Mirren they are just a very good team, and you would expect. I mean, I would certainly expect them to finish top 6 again. I think it's quite obvious who. I mean, Rangers notwithstanding, I think the top 6, the two teams, the two Edinburgh teams look to me in decent nick. Aberdeen much less so. I would say, but it's Mirren and then Motherwell are the two teams that you would think you could definitely at the moment they just look like kind of the sort of best coached, most settled teams in amongst the rest of them. They look like they know what they're doing. There's not going to be any sort of surprises for them, and they're probably just maybe a couple of signings each away from really coming on to it. I saw Robinson was talking about signing another striker, which he loves to do.
One with pace. He's talking about one with pace. There were rumours about, I stress complete rumours about Vargas, and I feel like that would be a good fit. I mean, I know that Vargas has his issues, but sometimes like a move like that can help. I mean, it seems weird. At the same time, I think Dundee was being rumoured with a move to the MLS, and people were saying, well, that sounds like they should be the other way around.
Yeah.
But and wanting a striker with pace, I mean, he certainly fits that profile.
Yes.
Because he has lost Olasanya, and he does like somebody who can run in behind, and he's usually, with the way they play, they usually get them running in behind and through on the keeper at some point. Much like Ayunga's goal, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of teams with a good shout of getting into the top six, Rangers, what were your thoughts on Theo Asgard starting up front at the expense of a striker?
Yeah, I'd heard that was happening the day before, which is again probably not a fantastic sign of where Rangers are as not being a particularly happy ship. Yeah, it didn't really work. Kind of harsh on Asgard. From what I'd seen of Asgard before Rangers signed him, I think he could be a really good player for Rangers. Kind of suits Scottish football, I think. But he doesn't. I mean, I think I looked up. I think he played like 4 times before in his career, and it wasn't none of them recently. He's got some of the attributes you could see that could make him play there, but it didn't really work at all. And then he's just come back from injury as well, so it was a bit harsh to put him there. But I think you can see. I mean, the reasons for that are obviously there's the Danilo just being not really at it and not. Just doesn't seem to be able to affect games enough as the number 9 for Rangers, and then the whole Egeman situation. So, it is one of the areas in which I've got a bit of sympathy for Russell Martin. I've probably got more sympathy for him than almost every other Rangers fan, I think, at the moment. But yeah, it's not a happy ship. It's a pretty toxic dressing room. There are players there that don't want to be there. The thing with Egeman, and then the club have been covering for him, but I've heard on very good authority that Egeman went AWOL in the summer. He didn't have a visa issue. That's the club covering for him. He just disappeared off the face of the earth for a week. Clearly wants to move. Turned up for training significantly overweight. Tried to get him involved. Get injured. Gets probably genuinely injured that time. And then obviously what happened yesterday, he just refuses to come on. There's it's a pretty serious breach of professional standards, but that's what Rangers are having to deal with at the moment, because there has to be a massive clear out of players, and obviously a lot of have started to leave, but there has to be more than that, and there are players playing that have to leave too. So
does Martin get a pass for some of these things? I mean, just to sort of cut across you. I mean in general, looking at this objectively, as objectively as possible, does Russell, given the context of Rangers are now not just in this perpetual cycle, they seem to be speeding up this perpetual cycle.
We might not even make it to the normal October time where we sit as second manager. Yeah, I mean, I would hope that the fans that needs to be separated from what should actually happen, because the fans' view of what should happen has to kind of be, which it sounds kind of arrogant and high-handed, but ignore the fans, right? Fans are just annoyed we've not won any games in the league this season, rightly so, but they don't. There's no great strategy coming from the fans as to how to fix that. I would hope internally at the club there's an understanding that while Martin's not blameless, and you can certainly point to individual decisions within games and just overall it's not working, but there has to be an understanding that he has not been given the tools yet to do his job properly. He's having to deal with, as I say, a large element of that squad doesn't want to be there. We haven't signed players in what stages of the park that he clearly needs. Players, up front being an example of that. He was having to deal with a goalkeeper that doesn't suit the system at all. There's players all over the park that don't suit what they're being asked to do at the moment. There needs to be a lot done still to be done in the transfer window, both in terms of ins and outs. Now, that doesn't excuse the results. The results have been terrible, obviously. But I do think there has to be a bit of a longer term view taken. Do you still believe that what Russell Martin is capable of coaching, which we have seen in the rest of his career, do you think that is something that will work up here because he did in the summer as a club? So I don't think that shouldn't have changed, because we know what Russ Martin is capable of producing as a coach. And I know that people that gets people's backs up, but it's true. Like he is a good coach for a certain style of play, and that style of play should work here. Again, that gets people's backs up because they think it doesn't, but there's an example across the road where it does, and has done for more than a decade now. So that's the style and the overall approach shouldn't change. The recruitment so far has been rubbish, so that's a big problem that the club, I think, have to realise. And that between now and the end of the window, I'm sort of hoping that the best is to come, because it has to. In terms of the, I think if you looked, I've sort of looked at sort of Leeds, because that's obviously the sort of test case you've got with these owners. If you look at Leeds, they've tended to make bigger signings towards the end, right at the end of windows. Now, I think even that is a bit of a strategic mistake, because the season starts earlier here, both literally and figuratively, because you've got less time to there's less margin for error.
The season's over earlier as well, yeah.
Because quite arguably lose next weekend against Celtic, then, and the league season's kind of over. And we're not out of August, so that's something that they'll maybe have surprised them. But there's also the European thing. I mean, we've not given ourselves the best opportunity. I mean, we've done actually well to get out of that, and it could have been. If you'd only watched Rangers domestic games and not been told what happened in the European games, you'd have probably thought there's a good chance your Rangers have gone out of all three, or are about to go out of all three European competitions in succession. Now, getting to not that it should be heralded as some massive achievement to beat two teams that the Rangers have been, but that actually should be more important. You have to actually get the Europa League money, and to be able to use that as a club, that should be more important than the domestic games right now. But that stops being the case next weekend, where that's we've really got to get a result there. So yeah, that is. I mean, the fans have gone, and they won't be coming. I mean, he is. I think there was a poll on follow during the week before this minute game where it was basically 90% of Rangers fans on follow want Martin sacked. So I don't think that's actually going to change. But one of the reasons that I wanted Russell Martin as manager was of the available sort of options or names mentioned, was I thought he would be the best at dealing with this kind of scenario where everyone hates him, because everyone hated him before he started, so that gets that out of the way early on. And I don't think he's going to change the way. I know people say he changed yesterday, but he's changed formation before, but the approach didn't change. It wasn't like the Rangers were lumping balls up front. I think he will stick to his guns in quite a stubborn / arrogant way, which I actually think Rangers need to do that. Because the chopping and changing and going back to the drum board constantly, I don't think that's the way to get out of this cycle. So I think time will tell basically whether Russell Martin is the right man win things at Rangers, or just a sort of useful human shield for the board at the moment, while they try to fix everything else at the club. But either way, I think that's like he's sort of serving a purpose. And what I don't think will happen is he gets sacked early and Barry Ferguson gets reappointed till the end of the season, as some people sort of seem to be suggesting might happen. I don't think that will be the case. I think it'll be he will get quite a bit of time yet to get this right. And I think you could be looking, I think there'll probably be double digit in terms of ins and outs, not both, but combined, between now and the end of the window, and then it would be a case of judging from there. But he's obviously already been judged.
That's all we've got time for on this week's Terrace podcast. No, you're right. I mean, the big question would be, who comes in? I mean, I'm not saying, and whenever, and I sometimes I hate when people say that, because it's like you can always do better, especially when your team hasn't won a game. A team like Rangers hasn't won a game in 3 in the first 3 of the Scottish Premiership, but it's just it's like a lot of the people that are saying get rid of him would probably be in favour of bringing back Barry Ferguson.
And it's just that Rangers have to have a way of playing, which I keep coming back to, and this is the way to play them. You don't need to be. It doesn't need to be exactly like Russell Martin's playing, but it has to be something akin to. He has to be a manager that's comfortable having 70% of the ball every week, because that's what Rangers will have, whether they want to have it or not. And that's not always been the case with recent managers. And that has, like, so you have to just double down on it. And you're not going to, it's not going to be unless things get drastic, they're not going to. But they're not going to replace him with like a Sean Dyche, for example. Right, it's not. That's not going to happen. If that happens, then that's alarm bells start ringing. But and that can happen sometimes in England, because it's easy to have these sort of highfalutin ideas about style and stuff, and then you might get relegated. So you try to counteract that. Rangers, you would hope, if we just about make top 6 on current form, then you'd hope that there isn't a sort of a disaster, like, right, we need to pull this out of the fire in order to finish second. Right? It should be the case that the Rangers sort of, even last season Rangers managed to finish second, so you'd hope that when things settle down, it starts to look quite a bit better. But for the moment, it's quite clear that there's a lot of people there, and unfortunately some of the better players, that's the problem, don't want to be there. So they need to come out. They need to be saying, they need to be replaced and replaced well, and then you go from there. But yeah, I would have some sympathy for Martin. I think it's obviously in short supply amongst the rest of the support, I'm afraid.
Let's move on to Saturday's other 2 matches. Celtic 3, Livingston 0, double from Nygren. I heard it pronounced at the weekend. We were saying Nygren last week.
I'll go with Nygren, but that's
Nygren. I think Nygren. I think that's what we were saying last week.
Yeah,
but we're still in
Hamilton
this.
It's called Nygren.
We're still in this phase where different pronunciations get said until things are settled on, or the players are asking themselves or stuff. Because I've noticed that Gassam has been settled on. I was confused as to why people were saying that. There was also a piece of Tom commentator commentary that completely threw me earlier in the season, and I wish I'd never seen it.
I'm annoyed with that,
everybody thought it was.
Sorry, because I've got my wee boy Miguel. I've got him. Like Gassama Gassam is his favourite player, and because he loves just saying like Gassama. And now I can't really tell him that, actually, the last day is silent there, lad. So I'm afraid it's still going to be Gassama in my house.
Remember, it was Tavernier for a wee while until that was corrected. I think Warburton had to correct it in a press conference.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've gone back to Rangers somehow there. We're turning into one of them. Celtic 3, Livingston 0. The other goal was from young Johnny Kenny. It just seemed like, in the end, a sort of run-of-the-mill win for Celtic. It took them a little while to break down Livingston. Livingston deserve a lot of credit for their first half performance. I suppose the headline from it was more the lineup that Celtic stuck out. And I mean, in some ways, I can see people saying this is a message to the board lineup. I think it's probably is to an extent. I think the way Rodgers has conducted himself in the media, I think, has been more of a message to the board in recent weeks.
I don't think a message to the board is really required when after every press conference, like, we need to sign players.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't.
Exactly, veiled digs and stuff. And I think it's a calculated risk that they can put this kind of lineup out against, with all respect, Livingston. I mean, they probably could against teams like Hearts at Celtic Park as well. I'm not necessarily saying that from my point of view here, but I'm guessing this would have been a calculated risk on Celtic's part, and they've come through
it. Yeah. I did when I saw the lineup. I thought, I wonder if Celtic would have actually, having seen how the first leg went against Kyra, they might have actually rather called this game off, which they obviously had the option to do. But I think they maybe thought that it would be more comfy in terms of the first leg, than they are. Yeah, I mean, I think some of the changes, I think, actually make Celtic better. And I might as well bring my other favourite topic up, having slagged Shankland. Adamida is Pesh, and actually replacing him with Shin Yamada, I thought you saw enough from him to see that he's probably a better option. Like, he moves a lot better than Ida. I thought he showed some link up. Now, whether he's quite as good a finisher, I'm not that sure, but I'm also not that sure that that's hugely important compared to Ida, who I just think is a massive, he's like sort of an albatross around Celtic's neck when in terms of actually looking like a good football team. It's never, they always look clunkier when Ida's on the park to me. And I think Yamada looks like he's obviously, you've not seen much of him yet, but I thought he looked bright. He looked like he was making the right kind of runs, and obviously the obvious comparison is with Furuhashi. He doesn't look as good a player so far whatsoever, but he looks more suited to what Celtic are trying to do than Ida. I think Rodgers likes the idea of having a big striker. And it's kind of always had that. In his sort of Celtic time, other than when he went with Furuhashi, and Furuhashi was he also was a slightly awkward fit for what Rodgers was trying to do. But ultimately, I think the team just look happier with someone willing to make kind of runs that Yamada was making. So that might be one area where they've kind of happened upon something. I think Inamura also seemed to play all right, which is and it kind of goes to the dysfunction that there clearly is between Rodgers and the board and the recruitment staff, in that they are making signings. Yamada and Inamura are two examples of that, where they probably they look like decent enough players with potential to get better. Not that they're really young, but they're probably fairly young in football terms. And Rodgers is kind of just like slags them before they've kicked the ball, and which is an odd. Just that disconnect, like, is a bit odd, and he obviously just wants a different type of or a different profile of player brought in, and he's not completely wrong to be wanting Celtic to spend more money by any stretch, but yeah, that was an interesting sort of subplot. But ultimately, yeah, Celtic looked. I thought Livingston defended well, but they were absolutely woeful on the ball to a level that kills you in a game like that. Ultimately, and I just they obviously didn't really carry anything. I think it was 70 minutes till they had the shot.
Yeah.
So that is difficult to sustain. And while, I don't know if the plan would have been to be open up slightly if it stayed 0-0 for longer, or you sort of maybe not open up, but try to capitalise on a bit of nervousness or anxiety with Celtic if the longer it stayed 0-0. But to concede straight away from almost straight away from after half time, that's sort of killed. And to be honest, Celtic should have scored first half. The save that Prior made from Yang's header. Incredible.
Yeah, what a beauty! I know.
Save the season.
I know. It's one of those ones where the George one was pretty, because it's just because it's so maybe the uniqueness of the George one is maybe I'll need to see it again.
Yeah,
but you're right. It was a fantastic save. There's no doubt about it. But I feel like the prior one, and I'm not trying to take anything away from it, I think it looks slightly better because it goes off the bar. It's got that more aesthetic. It's got a more aesthetically pleasing aspect to it, and I don't know whether that heightens the save and maybe makes the save look a wee bit better than it is. But I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from the guy. The quickness that he gets across and the reactions are just brilliant. I do think it's one of the. I think you can fall into the trap about being a bit cliche about these games, the away team for these games. But I do think that a newly promoted team probably just approaches a game at Celtic Park, regardless if it's their B team or not, or their reserve team, just not to get absolutely stuffed. And I think they did. I think they did okay. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying about them not really offering anything at the other end, but I think all told, they've gone out the cup last week, but I think all told, a point at Rugby Park, a win at home against Falkirk, and then not getting humbled away at Celtic Park is a fairly decent start to the season for Livy.
Yeah. I think they're in a decent place. It's just in that you saw Martindale sort of telling them to calm down at times on the ball, and I think it was a wee bit of frustration because, well, from my own perspective, when you saw the teams like, maybe Livy got a wee outside chance here, and then they'd actually watching the game, and you might have thought of that as well, just seeing that there was 0-0 at half time, but actually watching the game, it didn't ever actually feel like that. It felt like it was just a matter of time.
Let's go into our final match. Kilmarnock 0, Dundee 0. As Fowler says, if you can't be bothered to score, we can't be bothered to talk about you. Good point for Dundee. This I've only seen the highlights from this. Forgive me for not watching it back. Did a wee bit of reading around it. Are Dundee not quite as bad as people were expecting going into the season? Are there signs there that Presley might be able to put a wee team together here? Yeah.
Are they going to be the opposite of last season when they were quite entertaining but conceded too many goals, and this season they're going to be really boring but don't concede goals? Maybe. I mean, again, they probably, and it feels like, they've got 2 points from 3 games to do, but that's 2 points more than I think most people expected them to have.
Same with everybody. You were right. Yeah, 4 teams have won a game. Celtic have won 3, Hearts have won 2, and then Hibs and Livy have won a game. Now, as you said, there's 2 matches that haven't been played yet, but and we're only 3 games in. But yes, nobody's winning matches, so I think Dundee are sitting all right at the moment. Yeah.
So like they have probably. I don't know if this was the plan. Certainly, just reading from what Presley was saying, sort of in the summer before reality hit was the League Cup campaign. It sounded like they were going to play this sort of quite sort of positional, expansive style, and I can't confess to actually watching the League Cup games other than the goals, but it doesn't sound like that worked if that was attempted.
But neither did Motherwell's. People were mentioning this at the weekend. They gave the ball away in their own half to Clyde and conceded a goal, and I think they drew that match 2-2. So I mean, sometimes these things take time.
Yeah. So but they just look like they've got a bit more about them than they had. Maybe the defenders are better than people thought, and then they've got. I mean, it didn't look like Danda did a great deal, but you got the Murray back now, because there was chat that Murray's injury that he picked up was really serious at one point, but that obviously what hasn't been the case. So that was a real, looked like it was going to be a catastrophic for Dundee. It still would be if Murray was to miss a significant period of time, particularly given that their other forward options look ropey, to say the least. But yeah, they look like they've got a bit more about them than people thought, at least. I would probably still, well, I think it's between them and Falkirk would be my takeaway from the first, and obviously you're judging off a very small sample size league games,
yes.
But I don't think, I've not seen enough from Dundee to think, oh, actually, they could be a surprise package to finish top 6 or anything like that. I don't think that's remotely the case. But they don't look like they're going to be a team that's like marooned at the bottom.
Yes.
As looked
that's what it looked like going into the league season. It did. There was a real fear of that.
Yeah. So that's not been the case. So I think they look like you can compete in the league, and then it's probably Falkirk. You're judging off very little so far, but everyone has reservations about the recruitment or sort of lack thereof in terms of players with Premier League experience. So yeah, I think they're going to be in relegation. They're going to be in a relegation fight. I think they knew that when the season started, but it doesn't look like it's going to be. They're going to be marooned, at least as it stands.
And then what about Kilmarnock? I mean, they seem to have done some decent recruitment, even if not entirely sure where the goals are going to come from yet. But they, again, an unbeaten start to the season.
Easy when no one wins games in the league. but yeah, and they've got, like, I think if Bruce Anderson had been able to put away probably quite a simple header, the story
they did create the chances to win the game.
The story of the game again would have been Brannan, just because that was a great ball he put in for Bruce Anderson towards the end of the game, but Anderson just heads wide. So they look like they've got that wee bit of quality. I thought from David Watson looked bright again, and it might be Kettlewell. He has such a weird reputation in Scottish football because nobody really seems to rate him as a manager, but he's definitely quite significantly improved and developed players in his time as a Scottish football manager. I mean, I think that's kind of hard to argue against. There's examples every club he's been at, and you can't just always be. I mean, you could say, well, everyone would have, any manager would have developed Lennon Miller because he was class, maybe, yeah, but Kettlewell did really well with Miller, I think, and so other examples, like Theo Bear's classic one, but even going back to sort of like Ross Stewart and guys like that to County. So if he keeps Motherwell, if he keeps Kilmarnock rather in the league comfortably enough, and really helps just Watson and Brannan kick on, and I don't think neither of them have been, well, Brannan maybe right enough, but Watson's not going to go for Lennon Miller money. But if he develops those two and Kilmarnock bring in a good few million between the pair of them, that's a really successful season for Kilmarnock ultimately. So from that perspective, it might not have been the worst appointment. I mean, the alternative is sort of open the sort of mystery box and you get someone like Askew that the Motherwell, they've gone down that approach since Kettlewell has left twice, and the first time didn't really look like it was working particularly well, and but this time it has, or it looks like it is so far, and it's obviously more exciting to do that, but yeah, maybe Kettlewell is just a sort of a decent enough appointment for Kilmarnock for where they are.
I thought he was. I mean, the concern, not even concern, it's just the reason that I was finding it difficult where to place Kilmarnock going into the league season was the recruitment. I wasn't too sure. They'd lost quite a few. They'd lost a couple of players from last season, and I don't know. I just wasn't sure about how it was going to work. But I don't think I really doubted Kettlewell. I think he's shown that he's a decent manager at this level, and at the moment, it looks like it's a good fit for them. Could probably just do with a wee bit more in attack. People who watch them more will be able to tell me exactly what they need. But there's just there's quality there. There's something there, but I don't know. There's definitely something missing from that attack. I feel.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Armstrong's a massive miss for them. Kennedy, as well. Wasn't playing at the weekend, hasn't. I don't know if has he played this season? Don't think he has. So because he's injured as well. So that would help them. I like Dacker's. I mean, Dacker's is kind of the classic Stuart Kettlewell striker signing that he'll make something out of. It feels to me.
Exactly, the next £1 million.
Exactly, yeah. You don't actually. I don't know how good you have to be when you're like 6'7" or whatever Dackers is. Like, just score like 10 goals, and someone will sign you for loads of money because like this guy's massive and he can score goals. So yeah, I think that can that's I quite like the look at him. But yeah, they probably just lack that bit of magic. Armstrong was a massive player for Kelly for the last few seasons.
Yes.
He was always going to be a miss. And yeah, they probably haven't. And even your man that went to Wigan had a really good season last season, whose name has momentarily escaped me.
Bobby Wales.
Not him.
That was Swansea. Sorry, that was Swansea.
Yeah. Who am I thinking of? Thingy. The winger.
The striker.
No.
I was going to say, because I don't know where Kyle Vassell's gone, but I'd be surprised if it was Wigan.
He's gone for another team that sounds made up. In the the other team he played for was it was like San Diego Loyal. Was where I think we signed from, which sounds like a Rangers supporters club. But who am I thinking? I am thinking of. I'll tell you. Fraser Murray.
Of course, yeah.
He also had a good season last season. So yeah, they're down their sort of.
Yeah, that's a few crucial
wingers.
Players that they've lost. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That you've mentioned Kennedy, Armstrong, Vassell, added to all them. So there was a bit of an unknown given how the recruitment was going to make up for that turnover. Basically, I think we've done all we can here, Euan.
Yes, I can only apologise for everyone that have been screaming Fraser Murray at their podcast the last couple of minutes while I was scrambling about trying to remember what he was called. I
didn't even know what position. Name. That's why I was useless there, because I just had a team that he had gone to and I had no idea who you meant. So I apologise for also being useless. Thanks everybody for tuning in. There's plenty on the Patreon if you want to get involved there. Sign up. We will be back later on in the week with the lower league review, I presume. Until then, we'll speak to you all soon.